The red keep reeked of ash and blood. Smoke still curled from the burned tapestries and shattered windows of Rhaegar's holdfast as Ned Stark moved silently through the rubble. The siege was won, they said. The Mad King was dead, they said. Justice had been served. But what Ned found inside the nursery was not justice. There, on the cold floor, lay Elia Martell, blood still wet beneath her body. Her eyes stared into nothingness, hollow and lifeless. Her death was already done, but her children, gods, the children. He expected the worst. Everyone did. Sir Gregor Clegane had been sent by Tywin Lannister, and when Gregor entered a room, nothing living stayed alive, yet by some miracle or perhaps a curse, the children still breathed. Aegon, the little prince no older than Jon. His tiny hands were clenched, his dark eyes wide with fear, but he did not cry. Rhaenys, older by a few years, had hidden under the bed, her face streaked with ash and tears. She stared at Ned with quiet terror, mistaking him for another monster. Ned should have walked away, should have let them die as Robert would have wanted, as justice or vengeance demanded. But the North was not ruled by vengeance. He had just lost his sister, Lyanna. He had just taken her son, Jon Snow, into his arms and sworn to protect him. He could not let more innocent blood stain the victory. Not children. Not again. So he did what Ned Stark did best. He lied to Robert, to the realm, to himself. He claimed the children were already dead when he arrived. He buried a pair of burned peasant corpses beneath false names and brought the real Targaryen heirs. North in silence, under cover of nightfall. They were not raised as Targaryens. They were not even raised as bastards. He called them Eric and Reena, orphans of a dead bannerman, sworn to House Stark. They grew up in a quiet cottage on the edge of the Wolfswood, watched over by a retired septa and a man everyone thought was a grizzled ranger too old for the wall. Jon Snow never knew the truth. Neither did Catelyn. Ned told no one, not even Benjen. He could not risk the truth. One whisper could mean death, not just for the children, but for his entire house. But the truth always grows in the dark, like roots beneath ice. Reena had her mother's fire, and when she turned 12, she asked Ned why her hair was so silver when no one else's in the North was. Eric spoke little, but sometimes at night he would dream of dragons and flames. They did not understand what they were, but something in their blood remembered. Years passed. Robert drank himself into boredom and lust. Jon grew into a quiet boy who bore the weight of bastardy with grace, and the two secret heirs of House Targaryen grew like weeds behind the Stark walls. But secrets like these do not sleep forever. One winter morning, Maester Luthien brought Ned a raven from King's Landing. Jon Arryn was dead. The hand of the king had been silenced, and Robert Baratheon was on his way to Winterfell Lannisters. Ned stood alone in the Godswood, the letter clutched in his fist, his face pale under the weirwood's red leaves. Storm was coming, and buried beneath his home were two sparks of fire that the wrong eyes would turn into a wildfire. The royal procession was a parade of gold, silk, and arrogance. Robert Baratheon arrived fat, loud, and reeking of wine. Cersei trailed behind like a shadow made of malice and pride, her eyes cold and sweeping, searching for anything that didn't belong. The Lannister men followed in gleaming armor, their lion sigils glinting under the pale northern sun. And behind them came Jaime Lannister, his golden hair brighter than any torch, in the stark great hall. Ned stood with his family on the steps of Winterfell, heart heavy, face unreadable. Jon Snow was kept away, as always, and far behind the walls, hidden deep in the Wolfswood cottage, Eric and Reena remained locked away from a world that would kill them if it knew they still breathed. But Ned knew this couldn't last. Winter is coming, he had told them for years. Now it wasn't just a motto, it was prophecy. That night the castle feasted. Ale flowed, boars roasted. Robert joked loudly, grabbing Ned in a bear hug as if 2 decades hadn't passed. You were the only damn good man left in this cursed realm, he slurred, and I want you by my side again. As hand, Ned said nothing. Cersei's eyes never left him. Even then, he knew. If he said yes, it would mean leaving the North, leaving Jon, leaving the dragon children with only shadows to guard them. But if he said no, Robert might grow suspicious. The Lannisters already sniffed like hounds on blood. He said yes. The next morning, before the royal party departed for the south, he rode alone into the Wolfswood. The cottage was the same as always, simple, silent, forgotten. But the children had grown. Eric, now 16, taller than Jon, bore a quiet storm behind his violet eyes. He didn't speak often, but when he did, it was with purpose. Reena, barely 14, sharp-tongued and wild, looked like Elia reborn, with the silver hair of her father and the fire of her mother. Ned dismounted, heart tight in his chest. I'm leaving for King's Landing, he told them. Reena frowned. Why? I was summoned. The king needs me. The king who murdered our family? Eric asked softly. Ned didn't flinch, but his eyes dimmed. He doesn't know you're alive. He must never know. Reena folded her arms. So we just stay here, like prisoners. Like survivors, Ned said. You are not safe in the south. You never will be. Eric stepped forward. I dream of fire, of dragons. I don't know what it means, but I feel it. I feel like I'm meant for something more than hiding in trees. You are, Ned said, placing a hand on his shoulder. But not yet. Not while the wolves still hunt dragons. He left them. There. Again, with promises, with silence, with lies, but this time as he rode away, he had a feeling they wouldn't stay hidden much longer. King's Landing was a nest of whispers and sharpened smiles. Ned found no peace there. Jon Arryn's death was a wound no one dared probe. Catelyn arrived later, shaken, speaking of Lannister blades and Bran's fall. Pieces were moving, faster than he could track them. Robert was blind with nostalgia. Cersei watched with venom behind every smirk. And Littlefinger laughed at it all, dancing in secrets. Then came the whisper. Not from a noble, not from a knight. From Varys, the spider moved like fog, silent, ever watching. He approached Ned late one evening in the dark corners of the Tower of the Hand. There are rumors, Varys murmured, of children who should not exist. Children with silver hair, hidden in the north, near Winterfell. Ned's heart froze. I know not if it's true, Varys continued, but if I heard it, others may too. Ned grabbed his sword. If you touch them, I don't threaten children. Lord Stark, I save kingdoms from fire and madness. As you did once, Varys tilted his head. The question is, what happens if the lion learns the truth? Or worse, if the dragons learn who they are? For the first time, Ned realized it wasn't just about protecting the children anymore. It was about protecting the realm from what they might become. And now, it was already too late. Far to the north, in a small wooden cottage, Eric had found the sword buried beneath the floorboards, its hilt wrapped in old cloth, its blade Valyrian steel. Engraved with a name he had never heard spoken, but knew somehow belonged to him. Colon Black Fyre. Snow had started to fall in the Wolfswood. Not heavily, just a dusting, but enough to make the trees whisper and the air feel sharper. Inside the cottage, the fire crackled low, but Eric Targaryen barely felt the cold. He sat cross-legged on the wooden floor, staring at the blade across his knees. Black Fyre. The name echoed in his mind like a memory from a life he'd never lived. He didn't know how he knew it. He had never heard it spoken aloud, not even in whispers. Yet the moment he unwrapped the blade, he felt its truth. This was no common sword. It was a symbol, a relic, a legacy soaked in blood and rebellion, passed down from kings and pretenders alike. Reena watched him from the corner, arms crossed tightly over her chest. "Where did you find that?" "Beneath the floorboards," he said quietly. "It was, wrapped in wolfskins, hidden deep." Why didn't Lord Stark tell us?" Eric looked up. "Because it's a Targaryen blade, and we're supposed to be dead." She didn't answer. She didn't need to. The truth was starting to burn through both of them now, creeping up like a flame under dry bark. "We can't stay here forever," he added. Reena's voice turned sharp. "You think we should leave? Go where? King's Landing? March up to the Iron Throne and say what? Hi, we're the kids your king didn't finish off mind if we take back the realm?" Eric didn't smile. "No," he said. "But we can't hide. Not anymore. Not with people whispering. If we wait, they'll come for us." He didn't say who they were. He didn't need to. That night, while the wind howled through the trees, Eric stared into the flames. He saw visions, dragons circling over burning cities, a red woman with fire in her eyes, and a wolf's head mounted on a golden spike. And in the center of it all stood himself, holding Blackfyre, standing over the bodies of both lions and wolves. In King's Landing, Ned Stark could feel the air tightening. He spent his days navigating lies, and his nights fighting regret. Catelyn had returned to Winterfell with the girls. Bran remained in his coma. Jon was on his way to the Wall. Robb was growing faster than he remembered. But all Ned could think about was Eric and Reena. Had they stayed hidden? Had anyone followed the breadcrumbs Varys mentioned? Or worse, had the children found the truth on their own? A raven arrived one morning, but it wasn't from Mr. Luwin. It was unsigned, sealed in black wax, and bore no sigil. Inside was a single line: "The dragon wakes beneath your walls." Ned crushed the note in his fist. His face remained stone, but inside, panic surged. He had made a choice all those years ago, to protect the children, to protect some innocence in a world that had none left. He buried their names, their history, their bloodline, thinking it would protect the realm from more war. But the realm was never at peace. Robert drank. Cersei plotted. The Lannisters grew bold. And dragons, no matter how deep you bury them, always rise in fire. That night, Ned sent a letter to Winterfell under his own hand. Burn after reading, it said, if they come to you, do not stop them. Tell them everything. He stared at the candlelight for a long while after the raven flew. He had raised Jon in silence, lied to Catelyn, lied to Robert, lied to the world, and now his final lie, his greatest betrayal, was ready to unravel. But it was already too late. In the Wolfswood, Reena had vanished. Arik woke to find her bed empty, her cloak gone, and a single note scrawled in her scratchy. Defiant hand, you're waiting for war. I'm finding it. She had left the north, and the storm she carried with her was headed straight for King's Landing. The roads south were not kind. Reena wrapped her silver hair in a ragged brown scarf, kept her head down, and traveled like a common girl, barefoot, hungry, and angry. She'd always been the flame between them. Where Arik held in the storm, she let it burn out loud. Ned Stark had tried to tame her spirit, tried to raise her with northern restraint. But fire doesn't bend to snow. It just waits for the wind to blow. And now the wind had come. She didn't know what she'd find in King's Landing, not exactly. But she knew it was the center of it all, the place where her mother died, where her father was hated, and where her blood was branded treason. She would see it for herself, not through stories, not through Ned Stark's silence. She would feel it. Every step she took brought her closer to danger. Wheels howled behind her. Soldiers patrolled the roads. She heard whispers of Lannisters moving gold, of spies in the Riverlands, of something called the Hand's investigation. 1,000 games were being played in the capital, but she had only one plan: find the Queen, look her in the eye. See if she flinched. In the Red Keep, Ned was unraveling. He knew Robert was slipping away, to wine, to lust, to boredom. He knew the court was crumbling under Lannister control. He could see the rot behind the beauty. And now, with Reena missing, and Arik alone, he felt a tightening in his chest that no Maester could heal. Then came the second raven. This one was clear. The girl has been seen. Near the Blackwater. She asks too many questions. He read it twice, and for the first time in years, the calm Lord of Winterfell panicked. Reena was in the city. He went to Littlefinger. That was a mistake. You've been keeping secrets, Lord Stark, Petter Baelish said with a smirk that could gut a man slower than a sword. Silver-haired girl wandering the city looking for lionesses? That's a rare bird. Ned's voice was low, cold. She's no one to you. Oh, but that's where you're wrong, Littlefinger whispered. She's a very big someone. The last time someone with hair like that walked these halls, the realm bled for years. Ned leaned in. If anything happens to her, Littlefinger chuckled. Relax, I'm not the one with blood on my hands. But if Cersei finds her first? He didn't need to finish the thought. Reena made it into the city disguised as a beggar. Girl, she sold firewood in Flea Bottom, listened to guards talk in taverns, and watched gold cloaks swagger down streets like they owned the world. King's Landing stank of sweat, rot, and secrets. One afternoon she followed a knight through the market square. His red cloak marked him as Lannister, and he spoke loudly to a baker's wife about a royal bastard being hunted. That froze her. She followed him all the way to the keep's outer wall before a hand pulled her into the alley. She spun, reaching for her small knife, and froze Dot. It was Varys. He stood in silks, too clean for this part of the city, and looked at her as if he already knew every name she'd ever had. Lady Rhaenys, or shall I say Reena? He whispered. Dot, she backed up. I don't know what you're talking about. Oh, I think you do. And more importantly, so does the Queen. She's already searching. Reena's heart dropped. You don't understand. I understand too well, he said. You think vengeance is strength, but in this city, vengeance is bait, and you are walking straight into a lion's trap. I want answers, she hissed. I want the truth about my mother, about why Ned Stark hit us, about why they killed us before we could even live. Varys' expression didn't change. They didn't kill you. Reena blinked. They tried. But someone stopped them. Someone honorable and foolish. Reena stared at him. Why are you telling me this? Because you're not ready to burn this city. Not yet. But if you stay here, someone else will do it for you. Behind them, down the alley, a Lannister knight spotted movement. Reena heard the gasp, turned Dot too late. A voice shouted, There! The girl. Varys stepped aside. Run, he said simply, and she did. Dot and Winterfell. Eric had made his choice. The sword was wrapped across his back. He wore no sigils, no colors. But in his mind, he was no longer an orphan, he was a dragon, and his sister was in the lion's den. Dot. It was time to wake the realm. The storm finally broke. Rain hammered the streets of King's Landing as Reena tore through the alleys, slipping between carts and crates, mud caking her boots, her scarf blown loose. Silver strands of hair clung to her face. Shouts echoed behind her. Lannister knights, gold cloaks, someone yelling to capture the silver-haired witch. She didn't stop. She darted through Flea Bottom like she'd lived there all her life. But she had no plan now, only fear. She'd come for truth and found a death sentence. Varys' voice echoed in her mind. They didn't kill you. Someone stopped them. Ned Stark. That name had always been more title than father. Cold, quiet, distant. He never called her daughter. He never let her visit Winterfell proper. Never once told her she was anything more than a responsibility. But now she understood why Dot, because if Cersei had known the truth, Reena would have never reached her second name day. She slipped into a butcher's shop and climbed out through the back window, her side stinging from a bruise she hadn't noticed. Her fingers ached. Her mind raced. Dot. They would find her. They would find Eric next. And when they did, she slammed into a body and stumbled back. Dot. At first, she reached for her knife again. Then she saw the sword. Black, F-Y-R-E. Her eyes widened. Eric? He was soaked, hair tied back, the great sword hidden beneath a traveler's cloak. But his eyes, those deep purple eyes, burned brighter than any flame she'd seen in King's Landing. You shouldn't be here, he said softly. She ran into him, arms tight, chest heaving. You came. I had to. Behind them, the rain kept falling. But something had changed. The dragons were awake now. Far above, in the Red Keep, Ned Stark stood before the Iron Throne, staring at it like it was a loaded crossbow. The court was silent. Cersei stood at Robert's side, her smile fixed and venomous. Jain leaned against a pillar, arms crossed, bored but watchful. Littlefinger hovered near Varys. both watching Ned like two spiders waiting for their web to tremble. Robert was drunk again. Of course he was, but the Queen was not. "We have reports," Cersei said, sweet as honey, "of a girl with silver hair stirring unrest in the city." Ned said nothing. "A child," she added, "resembling the deceased Princess Rhaenys. A remarkable resemblance, in fact." Robert scoffed. "Dead girls don't come back." "Unless they were never killed," Cersei countered, sharp as steel. Silence fell over the court. Then Robert stood. His voice dropped into that low, dangerous growl that once echoed on battlefields. "You're saying the girl is her?" "I'm saying she could be," Cersei said. "And if she is, then Lord Stark has deceived us for nearly 2 decades. Eyes turned to Ned, and still he said nothing, not yet. That night, Varys found Eric and Reena again, hidden beneath the Sept of Baelor, in an old crypt from Rhaegar's reign. He stared at them for a long moment. "You've lit the match," he said. To Eric, "I'm not here to start war," Eric replied. "No, but war doesn't care about your intentions." He reached into his sleeve and pulled out a scroll. "I intercepted this," he said, handing it over. "A raven meant for Tywin Lannister." Eric opened it. His jaw clenched. "The girl leaves. If the boy follows, we move before Stark buries the truth." Reena stepped forward. "They're going to kill us." "No," Varys said. "They're going to try. But if you want to survive, if you want to win, you must do one thing." Eric looked up. Varys' voice dropped into a whisper. "Burn the truth into the realm before the lies bury you." In the great hall of the Red Keep, the next morning, Ned stood before Robert again. His voice was calm, measured, but every word cut through the silence like a blade. "Yes," he said, "the girl exists. So does her brother. I saved them. I raised them, and I will not apologize." Cersei's face twisted in horror. "Treason." Ned cut her off. "Treason was what Tywin did, when he ordered children murdered in their beds. I did what Robert should have done. I showed mercy." Robert stared at him, stunned. "They are not your enemies," Ned continued. "But if you kill them now, you will create the very war you fear." Cersei stepped forward. "They are a threat to the throne." "So were your children," Ned said softly, "before you made them monsters." Jaime's hand moved toward his sword, but Ned's wasn't on his sword. His hand was at his chest, holding the sealed letter Varys had delivered that morning, the one sent to every major house in the realm, revealing the truth. The realm read the letter. It was written in Lord Eddard Stark's careful, even hand. It bore his seal, dire wolf in black wax, and traveled fast by raven to every corner of Westeros, to Riverrun, to the Vale, to Old Town, even to Dragonstone, where men still whispered of fire and blood. In it, Ned Stark confessed everything. "I took in the children of Prince Rhaegar Targaryen, Aegon, and Rhaenys, when the first found them alive at the end of Robert's rebellion. I claimed they were dead to protect them from a war that had already murdered enough children. They live, and they are no threat to the throne, unless the throne continues to hunt them." By midday, the letter had become wildfire. Some lords called it treason, others a return to honor. The faith remained quiet. The mesters whispered behind closed doors. But the people remembered the sack of King's Landing, the screams, the blood on the stones of the Red Keep. Some cheered, others spat. But no one ignored it. Dot in the Red Keep. Robert was shaking with rage. "You dare humiliate me like this?" he roared, the veins bulging on his neck, goblet flung against the wall. "Send word to the whole realm before speaking to your king?" Ned stood firm. "You wouldn't have listened. I'd have had them killed." "And that," Ned said darkly, "is why I didn't tell you." Silence. The throne room held its breath. Cersei glared with pure hatred. Jaime's hand never left the hilt of his sword, but Robert deflated. For a moment he looked, not like a king, but like a tired old man haunted by ghosts of war. "I trusted you, Ned. I protected your kingdom." Robert turned away. He didn't order Ned's execution. He didn't pardon him either. He just said, "Get them out of my city now, before Cersei does what I should have done." Outside the gates of the Red Keep, Arik and Reena stood in plain sight for the first time. No disguises, no shadows. Arik wore a dark tunic lined in crimson. Reena let her silver hair fall free in the sun. People stopped and stared. Some bowed, some gasped. One old woman fell to her knees. "The dragon's children," she whispered. "The prince and the princess." Gold cloaks gathered, uncertain, but no swords were drawn. The order had not come. And the name Stark still held weight, for now. That evening, Ned met them at the old sept in the city's underbelly. He looked older than they remembered, more tired, more beaten, but his eyes still held that stubborn Stark resolve. "You forced my hand," he said. "The realm knows now. There's no going back." "We don't want to hide anymore," Arik said. "I know," Ned answered. Reena folded her arms. "So what now? You send us back north and hope the world forgets again?" Ned looked between them. "No, you're not children anymore." He pulled out 2 scrolls. One is a writ of legitimacy, signed under Robert's seal. It names you both as lawful heirs of Prince Rhaegar, under the condition you claim no right to the Iron Throne. Arik frowned. "And the other, the second, is blank. You can write your own name, claim your birthright, start a war." He held both scrolls out. "You choose." Neither of them reached for the papers. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then, Reena looked to her brother. "I don't want to rule, but I don't want to beg to live either." Arik nodded slowly. "Then we take neither. Not yet. Not until we know who we are, not just what they made us." Ned tucked the scrolls away. He almost smiled. "You sound like a Stark." But across the sea, on the shores of Essos, another fire stirred. Word of the Targaryen children's survival reached ears it was never meant to reach. In a dusty hall, lit by braziers, a girl with silver hair and violet eyes clutched the letter. In shaking hands, Daenerys, and next to her, the scowl of Viserys deepened with rage. "He lied to us," he hissed. "He let us rot in exile while our blood sat in the hands of wolves." Daenerys whispered. "They lived?" "Not for long," Viserys growled. "I will have my crown, and I'll kill any dragon that stands in my way." Back in Westeros, Cersei Lannister was not silent. She read Ned Stark's letter. She saw the crowds whispering. She saw the realm shift. And in her chambers, she gave a simple command to her brother Jaime. No more lies, no more games. Kill them both before the realm forgets they were ever meant to die. The night they came for them, the bells were still ringing in the distance, half in celebration, half in warning. Reena was the first to hear the boots. A whisper beneath her window, a flicker of shadow against torchlight. She rolled off her cot, barefoot and silent, eyes sharp. Eric was already at the door, sword in hand. Black FYR. They had known this was coming. Maybe not tonight, maybe not this soon. But Ned Stark's name only bought time. And time in King's Landing was always borrowed. The knock on the door was polite. Then came the kick. 6 gold cloaks poured into the room, swords drawn. But they weren't alone. Behind them came 2 knights in Lannister red, and a third figure wearing all black and a smirk like a blade. Sir Meryn Trant. By command of Queen Regent Cersei, he said, "You're to be detained under suspicion of treason." Eric stepped forward. "You mean executed?" Trant shrugged. "We can do it here, if you like." The first man lunged. The first man fell. Black fire howled through the air, faster, cleaner, hungrier than any blade had a right to be. The room filled with screams and steel. Eric moved like he was born in war. Reena dodged between the clashing blades, slashing low with a dagger Ned had given her long ago. 1 gold cloak fell to his knees, gurgling. Another backed away, eyes wide, with terror. "Retreat," one shouted, grabbing Trant's shoulder. But Trant didn't move. He just stared at Eric. "Who are you?" The boy didn't answer. He just raised the blade again, and Trant ran. By dawn, the city was on fire, metaphorically and nearly literally. Rumors spread like fever. The silver-haired boy killed 6 guards. They say he's the dragon. Reborn. Ned Stark armed them. He's building an army. None of it was true. Not yet. But truth didn't matter. By the time the small council met, Robert was passed out drunk in his chambers, and Cersei sat on the throne like she owned it. "Lord Stark has made his move," she declared. "We respond in kind." Littlefinger twirled his mustache. "You want to arrest him?" "No," she snapped. "I want his head. I want his house burned to the ground." Varys, in his calm, unreadable way, finally spoke, perhaps escalating. This would only prove his point. The realm is already speaking his truth. If we act rashly, Cersei's hand slammed the arm of the throne. Then let them choke on it. Ned Stark knew. He felt the walls close in like winter wind. He sent ravens north, to Robb, to Catelyn, to Stannis, to anyone who might still remember honor. But he also sent one final message. Not on paper. To Eric. The boy met him in the crypts. Under the Red Keep, among the bones of kings and the dust of dragons. "This city is lost," Ned said, voice low. "You have 2 choices. Flee or rise." Eric looked him in the eye. "You always taught us not to seek power." "I taught you to survive," Ned corrected. "But survival isn't enough anymore." He handed him a small carved box. Inside was a ring, gold, with the 3-headed dragon engraved in obsidian. The royal sigil of House Targaryen. Once worn by Rhaegar himself. Eric stared at it. "I'm not him." "No," Ned said. "You're better. You were raised without entitlement, without vengeance. And if you choose to lead differently." For a moment, Eric looked like a child again. Just a boy who grew up in a forest. A boy with no name, no crown, no future. Then he closed the box and slid it into his cloak. Reena didn't want to run. She wanted to burn the Red Keep to the ground. She wanted to find Cersei and slit her throat. But she followed her brother. Always had. Barry's opened the escape route, tunnels beneath the sept, through the sewers, out past the mud gate. No guards, no trackers, but someone was waiting for them anyway. Jaime Lannister, alone, sword already drawn. I was hoping you'd take the bait, he said, smiling. Makes things easier. Eric stepped forward. You'd kill a boy? Jaime tilted his head. I killed a king. A boy's just another lie with legs. Steel rang out. Jaime lunged. Blackfire met his blade in a clash that echoed through the stone halls. He was faster, more experienced, but Eric fought like he knew what the blade wanted. Not polished, but pure. He didn't fight to kill. He fought to protect, and that made all the difference. Reena cut a lantern from the wall and smashed it at Jaime's feet. Flames roared up. Jaime cursed and fell back, arms seared. They didn't wait. They vanished into the dark dot. By the time the Queen heard of the escape, she was already drafting orders for Ned Stark's arrest. But the doors to the small council chamber burst open before her ink-dried dot, and standing there, blood on his sleeve, hair wild with smoke, was Jaime. They're gone, he said. The boy fights like his father. Cersei's lip curled. Then he dies like him. Jaime turned to her slowly. Maybe not. Maybe this time. The dragons. When? The raven flew through a storm. Its black wings sliced the sky above the neck, over the crumbling towers of Moat Cailin, across the silent white fields of the north, and finally into Winterfell, where Robb Stark stood with a letter clutched. In his hand, knuckles white, his father had been arrested. The Targaryen children were alive, and war, long delayed, was coming again. Far to the south, across the sea. Daenerys Targaryen sat alone with her thoughts. She had read Ned Stark's letter 10 times. He had saved her brother and sister, the ones she thought dead her entire life, her blood, her family, and yet they had grown up without her. They never knew her name. They never suffered exile. They never knew what it was to beg for bread in the streets of Meereen, or to watch their brother rot from madness. She felt angry and guilty and afraid, but mostly she felt curious. What kind of dragon had the wolves raised? In Westeros, the people were restless. In the Riverlands, some called for a Targaryen return. In the Reach, old bannermen whispered of restoring balance. In the Vale, young lords questioned everything the crown had told them. The name Targaryen had once meant tyranny. Now it meant hope or rebellion. Arik and Reena rode north through hidden paths, cloaked in snow and silence. No banners, no declarations. Only the whispers that followed them through every village. He carries the sword of the kings. She has her mother's fire. They are the ones Ned Stark kept safe. They reached the banks of the Trident. In the dead of night, Eric dismounted and stood at the edge of the water, staring into the black current. Reena stepped beside him. This is where he died, Eric said. Rhaegar, our father, on this very river. Reena said nothing for a long time. Then, you're not him, and I'm not Elia. We don't owe this realm a damn thing, he nodded. But we owe it a choice. In King's Landing, Ned Stark was imprisoned in the same cell that once held traitors and madmen. Varys visited him. They escaped, the spider said quietly. North, past the Trident, they will make it. Ned closed his eyes in quiet relief. You did what few men would. Varys continued. You gave the realm another future, and I may die for it, Ned replied. Varys gave a ghost of a smile. Perhaps, but it's not your death that matters. It's what comes after. At Winterfell's gates, the guards were confused by the two cloaked riders who arrived unannounced. They demanded to see the lady of the house. When Catelyn Stark stepped out, wary and pale, she saw them standing in the snow, two strangers, until Reena removed her hood. Silver hair, violet eyes. Catelyn staggered back, hand to her mouth, and Eric spoke. We are not here to take your home. We are here because it was our home, too. The North took them in, reluctantly. Some cursed Ned's name for what he'd done. Others praised him, but none could ignore what stood before them now. A boy with the sword of kings, a girl who bore the fire of her house, and both raised by the same man they had once called Warden of the North. A month later, a raven arrived from the wall. Jon Snow. Read the letter alone. When he saw the names signed at the bottom, his chest tightened. To our brother in blood, we know the truth now, and we want you to know, so do we. Arik, Reena. He looked northward, toward the darkness beyond the wall, toward the ancient cold dot, and for the first time in years, Jon Snow allowed himself to believe he wasn't alone. Back in the capital, Cersei Lannister prepared for war, but the realm was no longer hers. Whispers had become banners. Fear had become fury. And in the streets of the capital, children played with carved wooden dragons instead of lions. Ned Stark would never leave his cell. He would never see the North again, but the last thing he saw before the door closed, forever, was Varys placing a sealed scroll in a raven's beak, one written in fire and ice. And far away, in the freezing winds of Winterfell, Arik Targaryen stood before the heart tree. He knelt in the snow and whispered the old words of the North. I swear it now, for the realm, for the truth, for the blood that should never have been spilled. Reena placed her hand on his shoulder. And in the wind, the old gods said nothing, but they watched. They always watched.